to revisit the policy, and they have done so. And so I'm going to read this now. When content of a proposed access hour is considered questionable or controversial by the access hour producer, the proposal will be sent to the News and Public Affairs Director's attention. The News and Public Affairs Director will notify the staff collective of the proposal to alert them for a possible public response and to hear staff comments. Approval or rejection of the proposal will be at the News and Public Affairs Director's discretion. The notification wasn't clear the last time, and so I hope that solves the communication problem that we had. So at this time, we'll go to the communications from the public, and Thistle had asked for some time to make a statement. By the way, I'd like to keep our statements to 5 minutes or less, just so we don't go late.
Yeah, thank you.
Can we say more? Well, I'll give you 1 minute.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So, greetings. Thanks for the public comments period of the meeting. I'm here this evening to state that the Access Hour is a very important WORT institution that guarantees underrepresented and marginalized voices have a space on the public airwaves. It helps to fulfill the mission by providing a place to challenge, quote, the cultural and intellectual assumptions of WORT listeners through unique and diverse programming. Because WORT's mission is committed not only to facilitation of community expression and provision of community access to the airwaves, but also to challenging the cultural and intellectual assumptions of our listeners, one can conclude after listening to my Access Hour programs that my programming is congruent with WORT's mission. The WORT mission statement further promotes orientation towards the audience with concern for those underrepresented by other media. Radical and lesbian feminist politics, news, and analysis fall into this category as there is a trend called deplatforming that censors and silences feminist voices in other media. Finally, with regard to the WORT mission statement, my programs provide a human perspective respecting all peoples and their environments by respecting women and lesbians as a people and understanding that their environment is a hostile one due to male dominance. Respect for women as a people does not mean disrespect for any other class of people, including trans-identifying people and men. Respect for women ultimately promotes respect for everyone as a human being able to live and coexist with each other in public spheres. Unless you are prepared to say that women and lesbians are no longer oppressed groups, then we should be given access to the airwaves to state our case against patriarchy and celebrate women's culture on a first-come, first-served basis once a year, just like everyone else who produces Access Hour programs. But that's not all I came here to say tonight. I am concerned about my own well-being as a member of the Madison community who likes to sing and do environmental activism in addition to analyzing society through civil discussion and exchange of ideas. The defaming statements about me coming from certain members of the WORT community are inhumane and should be condemned. My views have publicly been compared to those of Hitler, as well as my integrity questioned with statements about me being less than honest, a proponent of hate speech, that I am actively harmful, incredibly harmful to marginalized people, of me having hatefully transphobic ideas, and me being harassing of individuals. All of these statements about me are false. If you believe them to be true, you should find and provide evidence for them. Why do I regularly get punished for putting forth a feminist analysis of transgender politics? If transgender activists and proponents are upset about me discussing gender identity politics and legislation and how they impact girls and women, they can create their own Access Hour program on the topic and defend their views. Launching online smear campaigns of hurtful slander of me as a person, damaging my reputation and harming my music career is not an appropriate response to my Access Hour programs. If you are going to be putting out ideas about transgender and gender identity, then members of the public have the right to discuss the topic in a civil manner. In addition, Madison media, arts, and music culture is hurt by this thrust towards censorship of feminist speech and a shouting down of civil discussion at our community radio station, in favor of witch hunting and personally attacking and punishing a local singer-songwriter and community activist of goodwill and tactic. The level of discourse about me does not belong at a WORT board meeting, nor a WORT staff meeting, nor in staff email exchanges. We need to hold WORT daily operations to a higher standard of practice. As far as discussion of barring me personally from doing any other Access Hour programs ever again at the station to punish something that is already done in order to avoid changing the requirements for the Access Hour as an institution, you should bar me personally instead of making it harder for people to get Access Hours if you must. After what I have been through, I can guarantee you I do not feel safe to ever do another Access Hour program again, so it is no loss to me, and if it helps you feel better, then we all win. Barring me from doing Access Hour programs in the future might just satisfy those calling for censorship, what they call editorial guidelines, and it will prove to like-minded feminists that WORT is not accessible to us. The WORT Access Hour is a wonderful institution that should be left alone to support challenging and engaging programming that helps us along towards becoming a humane and democratic society. Thank you.
Are there other comments from the public?
Yes. Hi everyone, my name is Byer. I am the transgender health advocate at Outreach. I've been a transgender activist for the last 7 years. And while I didn't hear
Ms. Pettersen.
Ms. Pettersen.
Mm-hmm.
Last broadcast, I did hear the one before that. And as a transgender activist, I will not personally tolerate WORT allowing hate speech to go across its airwaves. And trans radical exclusionary feminists, the part of the feminist movement that Ms. Peterson is talking about, is considered a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, as is their belief system, their dogma. And I don't see WORT allowing any other hate group access to their airwaves. Now, I don't know her. I've never met her. I've just heard her on the radio a few times. I've never personally attacked her. But I will not tolerate someone telling the transgender community that they do not exist and spreading this. I recently worked for over 2 years to pass the non-discrimination ordinance covering gender identity in Sun Prairie. During the public hearing for that, during the public hearing for that ordinance, I was exposed to 3.5 hours, as was the entire Common Council of Sun Prairie and the audience, of some of the worst hate speech regarding transgender individuals in this country. Well, that ordinance covered 26 different protected classes. The entire night, almost 4 hours, was spent trying to decide where I, as a transgender person, could keep. And the talk and the hatred and the damage done by those public comments actually swayed a few members of our board. The ordinance did pass, but I can tell you as a member of the transgender community and other members of the transgender community that allowing hate speech under the guise of the Access Hour, under the guise of accessing allowing marginalized people to access the airwaves is definitely what is wrong with this country, and I am very disappointed in WORT for allowing this to occur once again. And I can tell you that there will be I don't know what, but the transgender community is really upset over this once again. And I think some changes need to be made to who's allowed on the access hour and who isn't. And some common sense needs to apply. We now live in a country where hate has become the norm with devastating consequences, and I take that back. I am saddened to see WORT become a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I can comment if I can.
Yes.
Okay. My name's Ed Lemay, and first of all, I want to applaud WORT for, first of all, having the access hour. Fantastic. Secondly, addressing the concerns through board action to make the changes to the access hour. Well done. Very systematic, very nice. Good job. The access hour, my understanding, is that it's basically for anybody to kind of, you know, give them a platform, which is awesome. I think that this is an important conversation to have. I think that without Thistle's program, we might not be having this conversation. So even if you agree or disagree with her position, I think the fact that we're all sitting here is a good thing. So to me, that's an important step, and finding a solution, I think, is everybody's goal. I did listen to the most recent program. I did not listen to the prior program, unlike the exactly flip of the prior speaker. So I didn't necessarily hear anything that I thought was hate speech, although I'm not necessarily in that demographic either, so I can't speak to that. But listening to it, I thought it was fairly benign and open, and I thought it was just asking some certain questions and getting responses from people that had educated opinions about those questions. So that's what I took from listening to that interview. Also listened to WORT's last board meeting, and again, I applaud the action that WORT's taken to address the issue. I don't think that keeping anybody off the airwaves is a good thing. I did hear somebody say at the last board meeting that they don't think climate change deniers should have a platform. I disagree. I don't agree with climate change deniers. I hate their position, but I think they should still have a platform because that's what we're supposed to do in this country. So the fact that we're generating this discussion is because of that program, I think, is a good idea. And I don't think keeping people off the airwaves is necessarily the answer. Thank you.
I would like to speak. I'm just going to work from my notes here. I'm going to work from my notes here.
This is Anna Hahm.
Oh yeah, I'm on a Hahm, and I need to buy furnace filters. Oh, wait, wrong page. I guess my goal is to get everybody pissed at me equally in 5 minutes. I have had good relationships with people from all walks of life. I have had people in my home share broken bread with people from all walks of life, including people who identify as transsexual, transgender. I do not know the difference between gender and sex. I'm sorry. I know that in some languages, nouns have gender, and if you read porn, there's words having sex. I am not aware of what this is all about. I mean, now, I have only had one body, one consciousness, and that is my own. I know my own experience. I do not know your experience, or your experience, or your experience. So I don't judge. I don't care what you got going on between your legs. I care what you got going on between your ears. I do believe that the only free marketplace that seems to be working is the free marketplace of ideas. And perhaps some ideas will go the way of phrenology and medical leeches. That does not mean they should not be debated in a civil manner. I believe that free speech is a right, just like you have the right to wave your arms all you want. You can do it all day long. But when one of your fists hits my nose, that's where your right to free speech ends. I have known Thistle Pettersen for about 1.5 years. I agree with some things she says. I disagree with others. I knew her for a while, several months. We had several conversations before I learned that all the stripes in my rainbow flag are not getting along. I had no idea. I guess I've led a sheltered life. I have not heard her attack an individual. I have been made aware of vicious attacks against her, harassment against her, name calling, attempts to get her fired from her job when she's doing a fine job because of her opinion. She has an opinion. She is of the opinion, and I'm going to say this, that if you have an X and a Y chromosome, you are a male. That is her opinion. It does not change who you are. She may believe the moon landing was fake. She may believe in the tooth fairy. I don't know. Those are her opinions. She's entitled to her opinions. Now, we're approaching we're right around an anniversary, a terrible anniversary. 10 years ago, Felicia Milton Smith was viciously murdered in Mexico while on vacation. That person was a server at the Shamrock. That person was trans activist. That person was viciously murdered, and that act of violence is condemned. That is hateful. That is despicable. That is deplorable. But it was not done by a radical feminist. We have a problem with violence in our society. And I do not believe that it is caused, the fuels are flamed by radical feminists. I am not a radical feminist. I am not a liberal feminist. I refuse to be labeled. I think for myself. I try to. The idea, the concept, the transgender ideas and thought is a paradigm shift in our society. It really is. And, am I wrapping up? Oh, I talked. Have I pissed everybody off yet? Me?
No.
You're just at the 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm at the 5-minute mark. I think I'll leave it there. I am a good friend of WORT, and look forward to continuing to support the station and support our community. And let's work together to fight the good fight and fight the real enemies. That's it.
Before we go on with any more public comments, I would like to reiterate that this is a Board of Directors meeting, and we're talking about policies for the station.
Okay.
And while these are valid ideas, they're not something that's on our agenda tonight to discuss. So,
Good thing you cut me off.
thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Yeah, I only get 5 minutes because I usually take an hour.
You get
I'll cut it right then.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Darla Roseplanner. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a trans activist. I'm a former board member at Outreach to LGBT community. I'm the winner of the Linda Sundberg Civil Rights Defender Award. And I have a purpose in my life. And my purpose is to bring a humanist to me, bring a humanist to the transgender community, and bring a humanist to all marginalized communities in this world. And lately, or as of November 8, 2016, our world has changed. And it's become common knowledge to, or common practice to allow people to speak and say things because it's politically correct, and that anything we say should be okay. And we talk about people's safety, and we talk about how people feel unsafe speaking what they have spoken. And my understanding is that if you were a trans-identified person, you would know what fear is every day and moment of your life. Transgender people are murdered on a regular basis, and to provide a platform for anyone to marginalize any community for any reason is wrong. So for me personally, I am unable to support hate. I'm unable to support WORT if we have an access hour that we allow people to come on board and speak things that infuriate the public. Whether it's me as a trans person, Thistle as somebody in the LGBT community, I just know this. You can speak your mind. We have free speech in America. You're allowed to use it. You have to suffer the consequences for your words. Period. Me, Ginger, and anybody else in this room, speak as you wish, suffer the consequences because you spoke. And that includes me. I care about everybody deeply, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for this radio station and the people that love me in this community. And one thing is certain that has been spoken, and that's in our community, the LGBT community, there's lots of conflict. And the transgender people have stood up for the LGBT community. We expect the same from you. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public before we go on with our meeting? Yes?
Hi, I'm Nadia. I'm a host of one of the shows in the WRT, and Nuestro Patio, one of the 5 shows in Spanish. I'm also a member of the trans community as a non-binary person. I'm grateful for WORT for giving us a space, knowing that from the country I'm from, I could probably already be there for either of my identities. One of them is having a show in a community radio, so I'm thankful to WORT for giving us this space. And I've always felt protected by WRT. We have received hate calls for speaking Spanish in the radio. Immediately after receiving those hate calls, and we also received a lot of warm support from other WORT members. So until that day, until that the show appeared, I was feeling safe of being in this station. They say it's free speech. Free speech doesn't drive people into suicidal attempts. Ms. Pettersen's hate speech or opinions, as they call them, drove 2 people very close to me to suicidal attempts just 1 year ago. I'm worried about what she could say if she keeps having access to the word.
Thank you. Any other comments? Another comment, go ahead.
My name is May. I'm a sound engineer here at WORT, and I want to focus on. I was actually here that night. I was one of the sound engineers working with the news program that's right before the access hour. And once that was done, I had planned to stay for an hour and maybe catch up on some things about what happens in the news hour and so on. And I left after 10 minutes because the program that I heard sitting in the lobby was, you know, unfriendly, it was hateful, it was just vile, and it was all directed directly and pointedly to transgender members of the public, including transgender listeners, transgender staff, transgender employees, and I did not feel like at that moment that WORT was a safe, you know, a safe business for me. I did not feel like that this was a safe environment, and it was an environment I had to get out of. And you know, and I know that WORT as an entity operates under the city of Madison harassment rules, which cover transgender people and other gender identities, and it also covers the WORT is covered by the CPV, which also is, there's a letter out on the bulletin board that states that the CPV, as part of its funding, requires stations to adhere to the Civil Rights Act. And when that was written, transgender people were covered by the prohibition against sex discrimination. And I just think that WORT would be better served by respecting the transgender staff, employees, and listeners of WORT, rather than having programming which singles them out for hate and discrimination and whatever else. That's all I have to say.
Are there any other comments from the public?